So I just got home from a little vacay and I returned to the new Anastasia Beverly Hills Subculture eyeshadow palette, which is creating a stir all over the internet based off what I've seen when I was on the road on my phone watching YouTube videos. And there's all kinds of mixed reviews about it, but I went into it today like I would any other eyeshadow palette. I kind of just disregarded everything that I heard about it. I used my normal eyeshadow primer that I love and use pretty much every time I put on eyeshadow. And I also went off my judgment when I put my brush in the pans, which is something that I do with any eyeshadow palette that I use. And like I noticed off the bat when I put my brush into the matte shades, that a lot of product was picked up on the brush. So based off of that right away, I knew not to grind my brush in these particular shadows. So that goes for any eyeshadow palette that I use. It's something that I just make note of when I start to use the eyeshadow palette, whether or not it, you know, picks up a lot of product. Another thing that I do regardless is I tap off my brush. So I actually didn't have a lot of fallout with this particular palette, and believe it or not, I didn't have any blending issues at all with it. It created a little bit of a mess in the eyeshadow palette, but it's not something that I don't usually get with any other eyeshadow palette. It's not an astronomical amount. I'm kind of jumping the gun there, but the palette itself is housed in the same type of packaging as the Modern Renaissance. It's got a felt feel to it. I made the mistake of leaving mine on the floor last night, and my kitties got a hold of it and they chewed it and they scratched it and it's got cat hair all over it. So this palette contains 14 eyeshadows. Each eyeshadow is 0.02 ounces per shade, which in the terms of eyeshadow sizes in palettes, that's on the lower end of the spectrum. It's usually the smallest amount of eyeshadow that I usually see in a palette. It's the highest being, I think I've seen them up to 0.07, 0.08. This is 0.02 per pan, which is not a lot. This is kind of a double-edged sword formula because not only are the eyeshadows really pigmented, and I'm kind of just referring to the mattes when I'm talking about this, but they're really pigmented, but they're also very soft. So just putting your brush in there is not only gonna pick up a lot of product, but it's going to pick up a lot of pigmented product. I did use all three of the shiny shades in here, which is Cube, Electric, and Adorn, and I did have to, with each one of those shades, I did have to go back into them a few times to get the product, but once on, I think it's quite pretty. The Cube shade was the one that I really kind of had to grind my brush in there to get the product on the brush, and that's what I used underneath my brow. And they're a little on the chunky side, so I did have a little bit of fallout with like Electric and Adorn just because they're not super finely milled. When I felt these with my fingers, I thought I was going to feel more of a dry consistency, but these do have almost like a hydrating feel to them. I mean, they're silky, silky, silky smooth eyeshadows. These mattes, they're like really, really buttery soft. I've heard a couple of things about the pressing of them and whatnot, and that they might be coming out with another batch of eyeshadows that are pressed harder. I just think that's going to make it a little bit easier if they do that for the user, if they're a little bit heavier handed with their brush to pick up the product, because again, you just barely put your brush in there, and not only are they pigmented, but the brush grabs a lot of product. And the brush that comes with it, there's a flat shader on one end, which is very soft and synthetic, and this brush is made in China and the palette's made in the USA, but the other end, which Anastasia palettes typically come with a brush like this, I would never use a brush like this on a palette like that. The bristles are very stiff and very pokey, if that makes sense, like scratchy, if you will. And I mean, putting this in a matte eyeshadow like that is just going to yield like not only a lot of kick up, but the brush is going to pick up a ton of product as well. So I don't recommend using this, at least this end of the brush, in those particular eyeshadows. The other side is really soft, but it's dense. It's more like a packer type of shade, but I use my normal eyeshadow brushes that I typically use when I put on eyeshadow. And again, I didn't have any problems blending them out. I did notice, you know, even just with the slightest amount of pouncing in there, that brush picked up enough product for me to do my entire blending in the area that I put it. I didn't have to repeatedly go into the matte shades to pick up product. Once, maybe 1.5 on some was enough for what I needed on my eye. I feel like they both blended and they built really well. The primer that I use with these is kind of got a concealer consistency. It's got a tackiness to it. It's my favorite eye primer of the moment, at least. I've been using it for quite a while. I do not set my eyeshadow primer, and I don't want to get into like all the drama like behind this eyeshadow palette, but I don't feel like this was marketed just towards a makeup artist. This was mass produced for, you know, everybody out there that loves makeup, in my opinion. Like, it's hitting all the stores and all the shelves, mass produced to everybody. And because of that reason, I do feel like it could be a little bit more user friendly, because if you are somebody who's green or new to makeup, and you grab this palette because you like the colors, I can foresee people having problems using this palette, just because it is a pigmented formula, and it's one that also you pick up a lot just barely touching your brush in there. So like I said, you got that double-edged sword you got to work with. But again, that's only with the matte eyeshadows in here. So there are 11 mattes and 3 of the shimmery shades. 2 are duochrome. The cube shade's a pink duochrome, and this electric shade is a green duochrome. Again, all 3 of the this one's kind of a metallic shade, this Adorn one. All 3 of those shades I had to kind of grind my brush into those to get the product to pick up, and when it did kind of pick up, it kind of picked up chunky. Again, it feels like there's almost a little bit too much dimethicone and or glycerin in that particular formula for those guys, but there are a few formulas out there like Lorac Pro mattes that I just do not, I mean, can I make them work? Yes, but I have to like babysit them to make them work, and I just don't want to do that. And I feel like some people might have to, you know, baby steps and babysit this eyeshadow palette when they use it as well. But anyway, let me go ahead and zoom up close and give you guys some swatches. So here's the front with all the cat scratches, and then here is the back of the eyeshadow palette. And then inside here are your 14 shades. There is a mirror in there. So you can see my palette didn't get too, you know, it didn't get too dirty in my opinion. Again, I didn't go in there because I noticed when I dipped into the first shade, the first matte shade, how much product was picked up. I didn't go and grind a brush in there. I mean, I do that with any palette. You know, I judge the formula once I put the brush in there type of situation. Anyway, let's go ahead and swatch these by 3s. So here's one of the duochromes. I mean, these are like, to the touch, you guys, extremely finely milled. Those are the first 3. I used this underneath the brow, and I mean, I did have to go in there and kind of grind my brush into that shade to get that to pick up. And then these next 3. Very light pressure. An axis. This guy. I mean, even in the swatches, like, they're not even swatching patchy, which is kind of crazy. And then fudge. And these, gosh, these are so silky soft. And then these last 2. So there are the swatches, and that's just on my bare skin right there. I did want to show you guys these 2 palettes side by side because there's some similar kind of colors. The bottom one is the new Sephora Pro Warm eyeshadow palette, which each eyeshadow in there is twice the size as the one in the Anastasia Beverly Hills eyeshadow palette, and you're getting twice as many shades at 28 shades. For $20 more, you could get a palette that size. You just won't be getting like the teals that are in the ABH, which there's what, 1, 2, 3 greeny type of teal shades. But this palette right here is amazing. These I have all 3 of the Sephora Pro palettes, and I really like all of them. You know, the price tag off the bat you think is quite expensive, but I mean, you're getting a ton of product, and the shadows are pretty darn nice. So hopefully that was helpful for you guys. I really don't think there was like a batch issue or anything like that. I think this formula came out exactly how they intended it to be. It just so happens that it didn't come out being a universally user-friendly eyeshadow palette. So if you guys are interested in seeing how these went on and the look that I have on right now, you can hang tight and we'll get into it right now. I'm going to go ahead and prime my lids with the primer that I pretty much use every day, and that's the Lolo eye primer. This has the consistency of like a tacky concealer. This is what I normally use, so this is what I'm going to go with. I'm going to use the more yellow side because I think I'm going to use warmer colors from the palette. And I'm going to tap this on from the lash line to underneath the brow. I feel like I need a drum roll for this or something. I'm going to go into this palette starting out like I normally would any other palette. If I notice an excessive amount of kick up, I'll, you know, dab in the pan softer, which is something that I would do with any eyeshadow palette. If it starts to kick up, I just don't apply as much pressure. I'm going to use the brushes that I normally use to put on my eyeshadow. So I'm going to use the Wayne Goss number 18, which is a flat shader, and I'm going to go into the shade Adorned, which is, I think this is the only shadow with this type of a finish to it. I'm going to pack this all over the lid. And I'm going to go above the crease as well. Since my eyes are pretty heavily hooded, it just shows up better once my eye makeup's all done. I've got a teeny bit of fallout. I'm just going to go ahead and wipe that off. I'm going to flip that number 18 brush around, and I'm going to go into the shade Electric, which I believe Electric and Cube are like a duochrome. So I'm going to go into Electric, and I do tap my brush off by habit. It's just typically what I do with eyeshadow, but I'm going to put Electric right here. And flip it over and blend. Again, with that same brush, I'm going to go into the shade Fudge, and I'm just going to put that on the remainder of my lid right here, just to deepen that. And oh my god, yep, I went in too deep with that one. I'm going to pick up a little bit more of Adorned and go back over that Fudge color. And I do have fallout with that guy. This is probably where all the fun is going to start. Mattes from here on out. I'm going to use the Chikuhodo GS9 brush, and I'm going to go into the shade All Star, which is again a matte. And these are kicking up products, so I'm not like grinding my brush into them, but I'm also going to tap them off. And I'm going to start over here and bring her in. Yeah, and a little bit of that went a long way, and I'm not getting any patchiness with that, so that's good. Then using the Goss number 18 brush, which is from his new launch, I'm going to go into the shade Roxy, which is kind of a peachy orange. I'm going to dip into that guy. I'm going to blend this out. That's actually, these are actually really blending nice for me. I wasn't expecting that. They're very pigmented, so like that orange Roxy shade actually kind of covered up some of that, what's the color, All-Star shade. So I'm going to go back in with that Chikuhodo brush and just blend that up into that Roxy just a little bit. I'm not really seeing a matte brow bone shade. This shade Dawn is going to be, I can tell it's going to be too dark for underneath the brow. It's going to deepen up, especially when I put it on. But I want to stick with using this palette, so I'm just going to take this Isom, which this is actually one of my favorite brushes for underneath the brow. It's an Isom G29 from Muse Beauty Pro. I'm going to go into the shade Cube, which is a duochrome shade, and I'm going to put that underneath the brow and just going to see how it goes. It's got a pink shift to it. And I am kind of having to work my brush into that shade a little bit more than the others. I'm just going to put it underneath the brow. I just realized that the new Wayne Goss is the same number as the flat shader from the old collection. This is also an 18, but it's from the new Wayne Goss collection. I'm going to go into the shade Dawn right there, and I'm going to buff out the shade Roxy. Kind of put it right through here to warm it up a bit. I'm also going to take that same brush and go into Roxy again. I'm going to try to brighten it up just a little bit through here. I have just a teeny bit of fallout, nothing major though. So there's the eyeshadow done. I'm going to go ahead and finish up my eye makeup and I'll be right back to put on some lips for you guys. For lips, I've got the Dior lip liner, and this is in 593 Brown Fig. I just got this. It's a pretty nice nude shade, and I do like Dior lip liners, so I'll line these. And then for lipstick, I've got the MAC Steve J and Yanni P. This was a part of a collection that just came out. Spotlight Me. It's amplified cream. Really like this lipstick. And I'm going to blend this right over the lip liner. So there's the overall finished look using the new Anastasia Beverly Hills Subculture eyeshadow palette. I hope you guys enjoyed this video and found it helpful. Thank you for watching. Do not forget to wear sunscreen, and I'll see you guys later. Bye.